feel her as a mother. So lovely experience of that. So this morning we're continuing with Companion of God. And on Friday, we looked at problem solving. And today's theme is the spiritual path. And, I like using the analogy and that, we all are like fellow travelers. And when you are on a journey, especially a journey in a territory that's unknown, maybe like the desert or a forest or something like that, where there are no signboards to tell you turn left, turn right, or go straight. But you pick up signposts. It's like along the way, you see certain things that tells you, okay, you maybe see footprints of animals, and that will tell you the animals around here. So maybe there'll be water close by, or something like that. Or you see a bird flying in the sky, and that gives you an indicator. There may be some kind of vegetation coming up soon if you're traveling in a desert. So anyway, it's like about on the spiritual journey, it's really about becoming very in tune so that I pick up the signposts, and the signposts can direct me. And I find that it's so important that when we're on this journey, it's about constantly quietening the noise in my own mind. Because when I quieten the noise in my own mind, in some ways, when I sort of just allow the past particularly to subside and not to become the dominant sound in my mind, then it gives me the space of availability to actually tune in and to see what's the next signpost for me. And I find that it's very lovely because we are moving forward, and we all move forward in our own way that works best for us. There's no set formula for any one of us. It's like we have to pave the way for us. We take inspiration from each other. We learn from each other in that sense. But ultimately, it is a path that I have to create for myself in a way, in terms of finding myself and also my connection with God. Because my connection with God is a very individual thing. So I find that it's very important to recognize this, that yes, I learn from others, I take inspiration from others, I see the examples, I explore different methodologies and stuff like that. But ultimately, I have to like sit with my own heart and become more quiet and allow God to guide me, because God does guide me. And the more quieter I become in my mind, the more I get tuned in with God's energy, and I find signposts. I find things that alerts me to the next step, or to the next practice, or to the next awareness to hold. Many times what I used to find, and these were in the days when, Daddy Janki used to give class almost every day. These classes would be typed out and emailed to all of us. And I often used to find that in my meditation, sometimes I will get an inspiration or a kind of awareness of what I need to look into myself. And shortly after that, maybe a day or two later, when I would read one of Daddy's classes, there would be a resonance with what I was feeling. And I used to find that feeling very affirming, because for me, what it created was this awareness that, um, God's love and God's energy is there for all of us. And I use this analogy of like God's the sun, and the rays and the light is being shared to all of us. But it's like I need to catch the wave, you know? So the more that I become more quieter inside, the more I'm able to catch that wave. And that wave will give me the kind of indication and direction that I need for myself. So this whole aspect that on this journey we are fellow travelers, and we share, and we co-create, and we cooperate, and we inspire with each other. But within that, I'm also on a journey by myself as well. So it's a paradox of understanding, where do I take support from, and where it is that I have to really work with within myself. And then it becomes a very beautiful journey of discovery internally. There's a kind of when you have those moments of just a reflection or a insight of the next step for you, I find that that is what generates the real enthusiasm inside, because it is an internal adventure. To really get to know me, to really help myself to uncover my deepest potential. It is a very a deep journey, but it's when I have these moments, it really inspires that enthusiasm. And I think what I find, what helps really deeply, is that when I have those moments, to capture those moments. And the best way to capture those moments is always go back to journaling, just in your diary to write, because you are getting a personal instruction from God. And so just write it down. And when you go back to your diary, you will find that everything that you need for your journey, God's giving you the signals for it, the insights for it. And I find that when we create that kind of awareness in ourselves, what is beautiful as well is that you will pick up the signs around you as well. You will come across something that resonates deeply with that. For me, it used to be Daddy's classes, but I find sometimes that even you just, something will come across you, or an article, or even just a proverb or an affirmation or something that speaks to what you're feeling inside of you. And the big lesson in my journey I found was actually to trust that. Because what happens is that we're so accustomed and conditioned to thinking knowledge is out there, the wisdom's out there, the answers are out there, that when we do have that inkling inside of us, we don't always trust it and work with it and go with it. And that's what I find is very important, is that, in your quiet moments, the insights that you get, the reflections that come up, the signposts that you see for yourself, trust it, because it's like your deeper truth speaking out to you, your subconscious bringing it out for you. It's God giving you that signal. And so trust it and move with it. And I find that as I trusted it and worked with it, that's when it really started developing for me a greater sense of self, but also a deeper sense of self-respect. And in some ways, spiritual journey is really about reclaiming my self-respect ultimately. So because we gave our power away to many things outside of us, to materialism, to consumerism, to people, to our dependencies, to our addictions. We gave our power all of these aspects. And as a result of giving our power to all of these things, we could not hold ourselves with trust and respect. And so this journey, the spiritual path, is really about helping me to reclaim my power and restore my sense of self, my sense of trust in myself, and my sense of respect for myself. And so it's a very subtle journey. And the more we build that sense of self for the self, in a way, that's when we become less affected and influenced by what is happening around us. And that's when, that is what creates that deeper inner security, which then brings about that deeper stability that's needed. And when there's that deeper stability, what I find most importantly is that I am free. I just love this aspect of that. Ultimately, the objective of a spiritual path ultimately is that I live with total compassion for all, and I'm totally free. My heart doesn't get pushed or pulled, but I'm secure, I'm stable, and it's just a natural way of giving. So just recognizing that the quieter I become, the more I catch the signposts, the more I begin to tune myself in to that deeper wisdom and trusting that and moving forward with that. So I'd like to read what Dadi shares in Companion of God on the spiritual path now. And she says, a spiritual path is like a school, not a regular school where you learn ordinary skills, but a spiritual school where you learn the skills of spirit, like how to remove flaws in your character. So what are my stumbling blocks? What is it that distracts me? What is it that becomes the obstacle in my path? So how to remove flaws in your character, or how to remain unaffected by the negative influences around you. Some people think that if they follow a spiritual path, they won't be able to cultivate their individual talents. It's absolutely the direct opposite. You are able to give and offer and grow into your unique self more authentically, because you learn to know you, and rather than follow someone else or get influenced by someone else. However, what kinds of talent do people really need nowadays? To remove one's own ego is a great talent. To love others is another. There is no need to study all those other complicated things. If you have the nature of following God, then God's nature will become your own. Become true. Reveal your true self through your spiritual study and claim a spiritual degree. So very lovely that Ari is sharing. And this whole aspect that, it is this journey of becoming more true and more centered in the self and becoming more free from influences. And so one practice that I really like, and that is something to really observe and practice often. And I find that is really about observing my self-talk, because there's always like a running commentary in our mind. And I find that it's very critical in a way to observe the quality of that self-talk that's happening. Because whether it's our relationships, whether it's events and situations, whether it's our desires, whatever the case may be, but there's like a self-talk, and sometimes we remunerate events in our minds to try and sometimes make sense of it, or try to change the experience of it. And so to just observe what is that conversation in my mind. And I found that it's so important to recognize for the self, and to actually tell the self in a way, to really become true to myself. I have to recognize that sometimes it's my opinion. It's not the truth, but it's my opinion, or it's just my perspective, or it's an old attitude that is still playing itself out within me, that is making me unpack a situation in a particular way. And so, really to become the observer of the self and to challenge my own thinking, because we get very attached to our thinking patterns. And what tends to happen then is we end up justifying them. Sometimes we know they're not so positive, but it's so much easier to say it's because of the other or another situation or the other person or whatever. And so just to stand back and just to challenge my own thinking. And when I do that, I found it's like I'm dropping things of the past. I'm dropping influences. And in that process, it makes me feel lighter. And the lighter that I begin to feel, the freer I begin to feel. So that I can be anywhere and I can be with anyone, and I'm totally comfortable. The expression that we sometimes have, to be totally comfortable in your own skin. And that is what it is, that I'm not holding anything inside. And as a result of that, I'm completely free. I can be with anyone and do anything and be anywhere, and I feel completely at ease. Many years ago, it was my first trip to London, and it was quite a challenge for me to feel comfortable in a way, because I realized like I was like a clean slate, and that I couldn't, people couldn't relate to me on the basis of something that they knew of me. I had no history with them for them to be able to relate to me through that. And it sort of unsettled me in a way for a while, because I thought, like, just felt like such a stranger amongst people. But as I just acknowledged that feeling and recognized where it was coming from, it also then offered me an opportunity, that it's a gift. It's a gift to be a stranger amongst people, because it gives me an opportunity to create new relations based on the kind of awareness that I'm holding now and the virtues that I express now. And so it ended up being very refreshing in a way then, because it was new, and it enabled me to, in the process, as I was making friends and connecting with people, it also made me begin to see aspects of myself that I didn't know were there. Because when I'm coming from a place of known, it's like I'm playing out a very conditioned part, whereas now it was something new and fresh. So I find that was a very lovely experience for me. And it was an experience that then helped me that whenever I went to different places in my travels, um, I never felt any kind of apprehension about it, but there was a kind of enthusiasm because I knew it's offering a new learning, a new opportunity, and new growth. So that's what our journey is all about. That the more we shed the old, the more we shed the past, the more we shed the conditioned attitudes that we hold on to, and that becomes the filter through which we engage with life, the more it gives the opportunity to discover newness in ourselves. And that newness in ourselves then inspires a greater level of enthusiasm, interest, and new experiences as well. So the spiritual journey is a journey of discovery of your divinity, because each one of us has been gifted by God by certain qualities and attributes. And many times we don't connect with that because of our conditioning. But the more we become quiet, the more we allow this internal journey with which we engage with, the more we begin to discover, and that discovery then builds greater enthusiasm and a richness in our experience as well. So yeah, those were some of my thoughts for this morning. And so I'd like to leave a little time if anyone has any questions or comments, or even just your own experience, if you'd like to share. It would be lovely to hear. Thank you. So please feel free to unmute, and if you have any questions or comments to share, and if you'd like to put it on the chat as well, it's okay, but it would be lovely to hear your voice. Anyone?
Hi. Morning, sister. It's
Morning.
Helen.
Morning, Helen.
Sometimes it's very hard to get rid of the past. I mean, how do you know it's kind of left you? Is it by what you attract? Or sometimes I also see the past as a seed which you water and it grows into something else, maybe. I don't know. I just have difficulty with letting go.
Right. Yeah. I think, in a way, one attitude that I find helps a lot in just letting go. And it's not something that happens once off. I can never say, right now I've let go of this. Sometimes I would find traces of it coming back, but each time it comes back, I recognize it, and then I redirect my energy. I don't keep renumerating or keep thinking about it. Once I recognize it, I accept, and then I just move on. And I also feel not to hold the past with this feeling of regret, but to hold the past that it's part of my journey and it has offered me certain lessons. It has molded me in certain ways. It's brought me to where I am now, in a way. So it is what it is. And so in when I see it in that way, without that feeling of regret, then it helps me then to say, okay, what's the opportunity now that I can create for myself rather than, holding on to that past. So I find that, it does come up, but when it comes up, don't feel disheartened that it has come up, but just recognize it for what it is and move on. And the more you do that, it's like the more you don't give energy to something that holds you back, the less it has power to hold you back. So it's just about redirecting my energy to where I want to keep it focused. Okay, I hope that's
Okay,
helpful.
that's helpful. This redirecting of energy, could you give me an example, like a simple example?
Let's say I made a mistake and that keeps coming up in my mind and it makes me feel uncomfortable and sad or whatever the case may be. But then when that feeling comes up, then instead of thinking about that mistake, then I would say, okay, now what can I offer in this moment? What can I do right now? So let me have good wishes instead of thinking of the past and regretting about it. Or let me create something. So let me use my energy in maybe nurturing a plant or whatever the case may be, or writing something positive, making cards that I can give to people or share with people or whatever. So it's like recognizing that mistake and not letting it hold me back, but now seeing what can I do now to use my energy more constructively. So that's the key thing. Learn from it, but don't let it hold you back. Redirect your energy. That's the key thing.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay,
Sister
anyone else?
Pratita? Yeah, good
Yeah.
morning. I want
Morning.
to say happy belated birthday, sister.
Oh,
Lovely
thank
that
you
you're still
so
alive. Lovely that you're still alive because all these jewels. Okay, what I would like to add to what you were talking about right now is yesterday in the spiritual class, God spoke about the dot and not.
much.
So this sister now, Sister Helen, was talking about what do you do when that thing won't go away. Like Sister Nita was saying, which I've been doing, is just sit with that feeling that comes up, that feeling of disappointment or regret or whatever. Just sit with that with God, and you sit with that feeling, and it does lighten up. There's some miracle in that. I don't quite know how that works, but you sit with it, and then sit with Baba, with God, under this uh, your perception, whatever you think God is, without any judgment. No judgment. Don't add energy. And the feeling dissolves. It really does. It might come up again, but then you do the same thing. And then you don't feel that feeling of shame or why did this happen to me and all of that. Okay, that's the one thing. Does it make you do you understand me, sister? Am I
Yes,
making
I do. I do.
uh,
And I think,
the, okay, now the other, sorry, before you say what you think, could you just hold that? The other thing is, when we were children, we had no inner critic. I don't remember having an inner critic as a child. We just used to live. That's all I remember about my childhood. The spontaneity, the presence, the energy of the moment, the enthusiasm. And I'm thinking, what happened to all of that? Where did this inner critic come from? Thank you.
yeah, I think with emotions, yes, I do see the value of just sitting with God with that emotion and letting that emotion fade in that sense. Um, but what I was sharing with Helen is that sometimes we keep the mind, you know, stuck with that emotion that's come up. So it's very important to shift the energy there, because otherwise, you get stuck with it and you don't want to do that. But yeah, sit with God. You can even visualize God's light melting something, which is also very, very helpful and useful. The inner critic that you're talking about, which I think relates to what I was sharing in terms of that conversation that happens in the mind. I also found that what happens is, as we're growing up, we begin to create our identity based on our environment and the influences around us. So, you start going to school, and then it becomes that, you're a good child if you do well at school, if you come first at school. You need to be the best in sports. You see what you have, what your friends have, kind of a comparison that begins to be created. So as we begin to identify and create our identity growing up with what we have, where we come from, what we do, what we don't do, all of those things, then what happens is that then begins to build up that kind of inner critic within us, because it's stemming from us comparing ourselves with others. And in the process, we forget ourselves. So that's why it's so important to really begin to look at that inner conversation and break those internal patterns, because then only I can really reconnect with my true essence and who I am. There's some nice input from Seja saying that using God-given choices can also help us to forgive oneself and let go. It is what it is, and choose to learn from one's own mistakes non-judgmentally. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing that I did sort of come to terms with for myself is that a mistake is just a mistake. It's not that I consciously make a mistake. A mistake is a mistake. And so all that it is, it's just now to learn from it and not hold oneself back because of it. Because it's just, I didn't know better in that moment. So that kindness, that compassion for the self is important, and also connection with God to help us grow and mature. I think one of the things that has happened over time is we think we have to do it ourselves. And that's also where we become very heavy and judgmental on ourselves. But Daddy always used to say, remember whose you are, in a way that you are a child of God. And so let God help you as well. Okay, so I think the time's up for us this morning. It's amazing how quickly it goes. So just a lovely practice for today for everyone. Watch your internal conversation, watch your internal dialogue, and just let go and redirect your energy. Become more quiet inside so you can catch God's signals for you, the signposts that are there for you to move forward. Okay, so let's end off with a meditation now. Thank you. So breathing in deeply, I allow myself to return to my inner core being. Just letting go of all that I see, the memories of the past. And in this moment, just return. Return to that quiet place within me of being still, being peaceful, And I hold the awareness that I am light as I sit with this consciousness. I, the soul, I'm light. I, the soul, I am eternal. I, the soul, I am peace. I, the soul, am a child of God. Holding this awareness, I give myself that permission to feel myself being held by God's love. And today, I hold this determined thought that I will trust deeply the quiet signals that God gives me. I will return to moments of quietness so that I can tune into these quiet signals from the divine. So I carry this feeling of love and deep inner stillness as I enter my day. Om Shanti. So Om Shanti all. Have a lovely day today and take care. And we'll meet again tomorrow morning. I think Kalpana will take us for tomorrow morning's session. So take care all. Be the companion of God. Om Shanti.